Hi everyone, for the month of December we are talking about scaling your social enterprise, in particular a food business. We've had some questions from Geeta from Green Sisters about how we moved from our 300 to 400 square foot kitchen to our 2,800 square foot kitchen and office. We did this about 2 years ago and it was a massive move for us, and Geeta would like to know how we managed that process. So about 8 to 9 months before we actually moved, we started to seriously think about it, and the reason we did that was because we were looking to grow the number of courses that we ran. The production space was really quite efficient. If we needed to, we could make 5,000 macaroons per day, we felt. But in terms of having trainees in there at the same time, it didn't quite work. So we thought we needed to move, but we hadn't really done a proper investigation. So firstly, we had a look at our workflow. We had about a team of 4 or 5 people at that point, and each person got a map of the production kitchen, and throughout the whole day they had to plot their journeys. So how many times they went to the freezer area, how many times they walked around looking for scissors, how often they went to the sink to drop off dishes, and really looked at where we could make some changes. So even though we felt we were super efficient, we realised, there were some things that were making a massive difference to us. And we did that on a daily basis and throughout the whole week to look at the work schedule. We realised we were losing about 2 to 3 hours delivering on one particular large corporate client. So that was a weekly order of about kind of 1,000 or 2,000 macaroons. And at Miss Macaroon, we always do a double eyes check. So we understand that we're all human and we make mistakes, and that's a really important part of our learning. But when delivering for our customers, we always have to make sure that those mistakes never get to them. So we do that by having 2 separate team members check every single order at a few different parts of the process. And we realised that at a particular point, the delivery, this was taking an extra kind of hour and a half or so, that could have been removed. So what we did was get a separate freezer. So this particular order would be kept separately during production. There's absolutely no way it can get mixed up with any other orders, so we didn't really need to have that second eyes check that at point of delivery. So that reduced the space in the kitchen a little bit, but with moving around all the furniture, it still worked, and it took out 2 or so hours of our production time and checking time and quality control time. So that enabled us to do a little bit more, and it meant that it pushed back by about 1.5 months to 2 months the need to look for space. Really, the crunch point came when we had a couple of trainees on board who had quite severe kind of mental health issues on the Macaroons That Make a Difference training course. So they really appreciated being surrounded by professional chefs and being treated like professionals, but actually when it was a time when they needed some quiet time with the program leader to discuss some of the barriers that they had, it wasn't really very appropriate place kind of going into the changing room, which was quite cramped. So although we probably could have stayed there in terms of production, we couldn't stay there in terms of training and production. So we made that choice to move after becoming even more efficient on our production, just to kind of get a little bit more cash in the business so that we would have a real cushion. So we did some very in-depth financial planning. We spent probably 3 months or so looking for the right unit, maybe even more, and probably looked at about 15 or so different units, and finally found this one that we moved into. It was big enough so that we still had maybe 3 or 4 years to kind of grow while we're here, which is actually a really short space of time, but it was within our budget at that point. So I had to kind of figure out through our financial modelling whether we could afford it based on the orders that we were bringing in at that particular point. So making sure that the space would allow us to grow, but if we didn't, we could still afford it, because it's a massive risk to move to a new big unit and take on all that financial risk. And if you're a social enterprise, however you're constituted, that's a risk to your business and ultimately your social impact. So if your business goes down, then you can't do any of the good work that you plan to do. So it took about 8 or 9 months to make sure that we actually really needed to move, find a place, and complete all the lease negotiations, which were actually really, really quick, because we had a lawyer that we'd worked on and they worked with, and they were absolutely fantastic. So we'd worked with them to get our retail space, and they knew kind of how we worked and just really smashed it out of the park, to be honest. They were great. And then we got the builders in, and the works were intended to take about 6 or 7 weeks, and they took almost 3 months. So we planned for a 6-month crossover with some contingency in there for overrun of works. We didn't expect it to be that long, but we were really glad we had that 6-month crossover. We haven't moved out of our old kitchen. It's now our training kitchen, dedicated specifically for the first part of the Macaroons that Make a Difference training course for young people who are long-term unemployed. We had that kind of goal in mind, that process would take us 6 months. For us, we actually had loads of really big clients that we could just absolutely not afford to let down. So we had 2 kitchens running at the same time. Macaroons are extremely difficult to make, I don't know if you know, but they're very, very temperamental. So we had a completely new oven. We went from gas cooking in our training kitchen to electric in our new production kitchen, and that process of finding the recipe that worked with this equipment within such a big space and the humidity and temperature levels took probably about 5 weeks of just one person being dedicated to testing and throwing away quite a lot of product, unfortunately. It worked well for display for our store, but not necessarily for our customers to eat. So I think you really have to plan for quite a lot of money and time and people to manage that process, to make sure that you get back to that product quality before you have the pressure of actually delivering for your customers.